Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Andrew Cole with East Orlando Chamber of Commerce, and we've got a great presentation today about the state of real estate in East Orlando from Reese Stewart, who is the 2020 Orlando Regional Realtor Association's president. But before we really get knocking on everything there and getting things started, I do want to do a few pleasantries. One, we're powered here today by PowerNet, who is supplying our audio and visual for us on that. So we appreciate what they have provided for us there. And I also want to recognize our chamber trustees, which are Advent Health, Avalon Park Group, Avalon Insurance Services, Duke Energy, Fairwinds Credit Union, Great Florida Insurance of Hunters Creek, the Orlando Law Group, Orlando Health, and Suburban Land Reserve. So we really appreciate these folks. They're stakeholders within our community. They also are trustees of the chamber. We appreciate their membership and their involvement and investment in the chamber. So we duly give them recognition. As I said before, we're going to do Q&A at the end of the presentation. Reese, who is our presenter today, has a hard stop at 1:30, but we have Frankie Elliott, who can continue with any Q&As and questions and continue the discussion as we move forward. So you can type those into the chat room, or at that point at 1:30, we can open up the unmute so that you can unmute yourself to ask questions. But we do want to get through the presentation today before Reese has to jump off for another call. So without further ado, Reese, introduce yourself to everybody, say hi and welcome, and thank you for being here today. We appreciate you taking some time to do this presentation for us.
Well, Andrew, I appreciate you inviting me today, and I just want to say hello to everybody. Hope everybody's being safe out there. If you got on the call a little bit later, I was telling Andrew, I am a native, Orlando native. I was raised in East Orange County. I was in Union Park, went to Union Park Elementary, Union Park Junior High, and went to Colonial High School. And when I was growing up, there wasn't anything that really was happening in this town, so I decided to join the Army. So I spent 20 years in the military. Retired, got into real estate, and came back home to sell. So that's a little bit about me. I really appreciate you asking me today to come and talk to you. I'm going to kind of show you some numbers of what's happening in East Orlando, and kind of just tell you what we're seeing, what we think is going to happen in the future. Like I said, we don't have that crystal ball. I wish we did, but kind of tell you what the trends are kind of showing us, and we'll go from there. So with that being said, these are the zip codes we use for the numbers today. Pulled 16 zip codes, so we're going to show you the stats on them. And I understand it's not all inclusive, but you'll kind of get the gist of what's going on out there and what we're seeing in real estate sales as of right now. One thing about median home prices, they're up. Median price of homes are up by 7%, as you can see on this slide, in East Orlando compared to May of 2019, up by 7%. One thing we've seen and we heard at the beginning of the pandemic was people thought prices was going to take a tumble, whatever, but we're not seeing that, especially and as you can see on the slide, up by 7%, but also kind of comparing it to overall Orlando, kind of 7% over there as well. So that's what we're seeing right now as far as median pricing. Now, as far as the solds go, the solds, then they are down 4% below as what they were in 2019. So we're at 48%, down on that. Now, take a look over at Orlando overall. So we're kind of hanging right in with them. Y'all are a little bit, 4% higher than they are, but this is what we expected. We expected to see some of this happening. So when I get further down in the presentation, you'll see why this slide is kind of not alarming as a lot of people, if they just seen it and took it at face value right now. But right now we are showing 48% below in East East Orlando. Same thing with days on the market. Days on the market, as you can see, in 2019, 52 days compared to 41 days right now. Now, what's happened is homes are selling a little bit quicker, and East Orlando is actually selling a bit quicker than what Orlando overall is by a week. Now, what we're seeing on this is what we're thinking's happening is now buyers are starting to get back out to the market physically. So we don't know what the days on the market's going to do. Hopefully they'll be quick if somebody puts a house on the market, because you sure don't. They want their house to sell quick. Inventory, 14% decline, 14% compared to May of 2019. And then Orlando's not far behind overall at 11%. Now, what's inventory got to do with the housing market? Well, that has a lot to do it between buyer's market and seller's market. And a balanced market is anywhere between that 5 to 6 month range on time on the market. As far as inventory, as far as they sell. And if we had 6 months of inventory, then we would be in a balanced market. Anything below that 4 and below, basically maybe 4.5, 5 months, then you're in a buyer's market. And that's what we're seeing on inventory. We're starting to see the decline. Now, is the decline from what happened in the pandemic? Probably so. Can't really say. Only once we get back to the people getting back out there, maybe we'll see the inventory start changing again. But right now we're at 14% out in East Orlando. So, and compared to last year, you can see the numbers there. So we'll see once the market starts picking up a little bit more. Now, months of supply, once again, that's the big indicator here. As you can see, May of 2019, we had 1 3/4 month of supply. Well, look what happened in 2020. We jumped up to 3.35. Now, what happened there? Well, it's probably because the buyers stopped getting out physically looking at houses. All right. So that's why the changes happened at that 92% and the 60% over on Orlando overall. Now, anything at 300,000 and below in the price range, and this is not only East Orlando, this is Central Florida as a whole. Anything 300,000 and below, we're definitely, inventory is low. We're definitely in a buyer's market. Now, once we get to that 800,000 and above, that's where it tips over. That once we're in, anything below the 6 months, the 5 months, we're in a seller's market. Now, once we get to that 800,000 and above, that's where it tips over. We're in a buyer's market at that point. Okay, and what does that mean? It means that the time on the market, is going to be longer. The inventory is going to be higher. It's going to take us longer to sell the inventory. And when you're in that buyer's market, then the buyers has got more negotiating power when it comes to pricing. And when you're in that 300,000 and below, we're definitely in that seller's market, and it's been that way for a while. That's the big thing. We give out numbers every month. We release press releases every month. And what happens is everybody wants to see what's happening in the market. And it sounds, the 6 months I've been president and every interview I've given, it's like me, a broken record. All right. We're, $300,000 and below, we're in a seller's market, 300,000. Once we get to 800,000, we tip it over to scale in the buyer's market. So that's what you're seeing here. This change at 92%, that's probably related to COVID-19. We're just going to have to see what happens from there. Okay. Pending home sales, of course, they're down 25%. It just, just going to happen. We don't know if we are start seeing a lot more buyers returning to the market. They're going to they're physically wanting to go out looking at houses now virtually. At the very beginning, a lot of virtual showings was happening, but now we're starting to see more buyers getting out there to physically look at houses. But as you can see, what happened in East Orlando versus overall Orlando overall, it's almost double, of what East Orlando's almost double what Orlando's doing overall. Now, that's, once again, everything's COVID-19 related. We'll see what happens. Okay. New contracts. Once again, broken record. Knew it was going to happen. Down 19%, almost 20%, whereas over in Orlando, it's only down 4%. But that's something that we're probably going to see next month, that everything is slowly but surely creeping up. Now, what we're comparing here is we're comparing May of 2019 to May of 2020, all right? Didn't have a pandemic back in 2019, all right? We got one right now. So that's kind of like, once again, if you take it at face value and look at it, it's frightening, but hopefully everything, as soon as we get back to some type of new normal, or we should be able to start adjusting and the numbers and start feeling more, start feeling good about what's happening in the market. New listings, starting to see them on a weekly basis. I'm starting to see them kind of creep up, but once again, they're down 20% and in East Orlando, but kind of holding right in line with what's going on in Orlando overall, a couple of percentage points off, but they're still in the negative range. They're still in the negative range. So that's what we got to watch. Okay. So let's take a little snapshot of Orange County. All right. So 2019 total numbers sold 8,065 total units sold. 2020 6,523. Now this is compared to through May. So yeah, we're down 19%. Total sales volume, down 14%. Average sales price, look at this price going up 6%. All right, so sellers putting houses on the market, they're getting more for their properties than what sellers did this time last year. So that's a positive thing for people putting houses on market. And then the average cost per square foot, that went up by 1%. So them plus signs. So that's kind of a snapshot of what's happening out there. We'll see what's happening during this pandemic phase and go from there. Now, speaking of the pandemic, all right, there's one thing that I stress. Every interview I always go into, I do stress that we are not in a housing recession. We're in a global pandemic. What's happening right now, it was not from the housing recession. People want to just at times get me to compare what's going on right now in this pandemic with what happened in 2008, 2009. That was a totally different thing, all right? We're in a global pandemic, not a housing recession, all right? And the second bullet right here, anticipate a sales slowdown followed by a rebound. We've been predicting that from the indicators. We're gonna have the slowdown, we're seeing that happen right now, but also some of the indicators are showing we're gonna come back with a strong rebound. So that's what we're anticipating, is that rebound. When's it going to happen? Is it going to happen third quarter, fourth quarter? We don't know, but we're confident that that's probably going to happen. All right. Orlando remains a seller's market at almost 3.5 months supply. Once again, especially in that 300,000 and below range, it's definitely a seller's market. Once you get in them higher end homes, then yeah, you're going to kind of tip the scale, like I said earlier, and get into that buyer's market. But right now we're still, and we need to get inventory back to a balanced level. Is that going to happen? We don't know, but we're still in that seller's market. Now, we're a destination city. Orlando's always been a destination city, and we have a high history of buyer demand for new residents, investors, and international buyers. And we think that this is not going to change us being a destination city. People want to come here. Y'all seen the numbers of how many people were moving to Central Florida on a weekly basis, prior to everything happening here. So that's one thing that we still think it's going to remain strong, is us being a destination city. And we got the Mouse here, we got SeaWorld, we've got Universal, so people want to come. So hopefully everything will stay our destination city, and go from there. Now, record low mortgage rates, as you've been noticing, probably the mortgage rates have been fluctuating a little bit, but they're still low. So we're anticipating them. Now, how does that help the buyers out? It helps them out with their purchasing power. If they got a lower interest rate, they can afford more home. Now, if that interest rate on their mortgages starts creeping up, then it takes away some of their buying power. It takes away how much house they can afford. But right now, we're still at record low mortgage rates, and we don't foresee anything changing that in the near future. But we'll see. But right now, mortgage rates are good for them. Now, lack of inventory in the lower price ranges, lower price categories. What's that going to do? It's still going to safeguard them prices. It's still going to safeguard them prices. So them sellers are still going to get pretty close to what they're asking for their properties if they put it on the house at the right market price. What the market's going to give them, and also and that 300,000 and below, that's definitely going to do that. And like I said earlier, in the pandemic, people were thinking prices were going to tumble. We ain't seen that. You've seen the 7% increase. Upper end market, I know I've been preaching this the whole time I've been on this call. The upper end market, they're going to see the declines. They're going to see the longer days on the market. They're going to see them buyers negotiating them prices with them, because they're going to be in that buyer's market. So that's some of the things that, COVID is going to, some things the pandemic ain't changed. All right. It hasn't changed the seller's market and the buyer's market for them, both price ranges. So that it hasn't changed that a bit. Okay. Month-to-month forward-facing indicators. What are we looking at? Take a look at what happened. And this is what I was alluded to a while ago. May 2020 compared to April 2020. What happened to pending sales? 34% up. New contracts, 61% up compared to April. And then new listings, 32% up. So are we back where we were this time last year? No. But are we seeing increases? Yes, we are. And we're seeing them increases. We're probably going to keep seeing some of them. The more them buyers get out there, get more comfortable getting out and feel more comfortable physically looking at houses. So that's when that's a good sign. A good sign. If there's any silver lining on these clouds, is that we still see the pending sales and the contracts and the listings going up. Now, safe home buying and selling with a realtor. I mean, I'm sure that y'all are just like we are. We've been on so many Zoom meetings these past 3 or 4 months or whatever. And when all this hit, realtors got real good at doing virtual showings, virtual listing appointments, and all that. But now that the state is starting to open up more, the local area is starting to open up more, then what's happening is they're getting out there physically. And what we do preach to our realtors is safety. not only safety to our realtors, but also safety to the consumers, to our customers and our clients. You know, we talk about how to do open houses. We give them guidance on how to do safe open houses, how to follow the safety protocols that's in place. We still suggest, you know, maybe do virtual tours and video chats. You know, in the old days, it was like, here's 5 homes I want to go see. Here's 6 homes I want to go see. Maybe get the virtual tours and the video chat still going, and then narrow that 6 down to, okay, I want to see these 3 homes. I physically want to go see these. So that's something that we try to, you know, advise people on, our members on, as far as doing that. Showings and open housing, protocol. There is guidance out there how to do the proper showing and open houses when it comes to social distancing, when it comes to home preparation. And not only for the realtor and the buyer, but also for the seller. A lot of things have changed the way real estate is conducted today. And so that's things that we want to make sure we instill in not only our members, our realtors, but also our consumers and our clients, and tell them how these protocols and how we're going to be safety conscious with that. And then transaction, online documentation, management, titles, title companies, mortgage companies, you know, listing houses, purchasing houses, you know, all that can be done online, and then just schedule the physical components of getting out there. You know, maybe when you go have to do a home inspection, or when you have to do, you know, the appraiser has to get out there, whatever. But a lot of this stuff can be done online, and members are getting real versed on how to do the online protocols. Okay, and then here's our contact information. If you need anything from the Orlando Regional Realtor Association, feel free to reach out to us. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on all the social media things. And, you know, hopefully before long, this pandemic, we'll get it figured out and we'll be back to some way of new normal. But I'm telling you right now, some of the stuff that we just talked about on the COVID-19, some of it is going to stay with us no matter what, because, you know, our members, y'all have got better, you know, probably gotten better doing your Zoom meetings. So that's some things we could do. And with that being said, Andrew, I got 5 minutes, but let's see if there's any questions on that, if you don't mind.
Sure. If you want to type in any questions, if you're on there, if you're on a call, we've got enough people here. We can, if you want to unmute, if you have any specific questions for Reese on any of the trends and things that are coming down from the in real estate. So let's see. One popped in. Are people receptive to the virtual tours with the realtor? It seems very like a lot of time savings. How's that going? Have you heard?
It was going good. People got receptive to it. The realtors got receptive to it. They learned real quick how to do Zoom virtual tours. They knew how to do live, just them virtual tours of properties. It's something that you know, like I said just a minute ago, that's something I think it might be around for a while. You know, like I said, instead of going out and taking time physically looking at 10, let me get some virtual showings going and then narrow it down maybe to 5 homes at this point. But they're real receptive to it.
Are those, excuse me, are they doing them live, or are they having them recorded and then somebody can go watch the files for those? That I'm not in real estate, so I don't know, and I'm not right now in the market. So is that something that they can keep as a file?
Yeah. Once they can do it live, and then they can save it as a video, and they can upload it, put it on their personal pages. A lot of people are doing what they call 3D virtual tours of the property, where you can go in and everything's 3D, and you just click around. I actually done that in my company because, you know, I still want agents to come join me, but I even done a 3D virtual tour of my office so they could see a virtual tour of my office. So that's a thing, 3D tour. Yep.
All right, I got a bunch that have jumped in here, so we'll try to knock them out as we can. Do you have any thoughts on how COVID is affecting the commercial market? And are you seeing any trends already?
It has affected the commercial market. And Frankie, I think you're still on the line. If you could, matter of fact, a National Association of Realtors and even and Florida Realtors have put out some stuff. And Frankie, if you can get that to Andrew, that would be fine. Okay.
Yep. And that's from Keith. I have a feeling that's Keith Bertrand that's there. We'll see what we can find there. She'll look that up. This is from Justin. Do you think that banks will continue to allow online notary and remote signing after the pandemic, or do you think they'll go back to wanting in-person signatures?
Well, that's kind of like a double-edged sword on the remote online notary, even though we have, it was approved and it's passed into law, but there's a lot of federal stuff that goes in, along with remote online notary. Oh, believe me, that comes up in every conversation, and that's something that there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to remote online notary. And then, some of the banks, they want, wet signatures, as we call them. So that's something we're going to have to see somewhere in the future. Okay.
And then any resource available for RON. It was taking a long time for that third-party sign-up with the pandemic. I hope that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it does. It does, and unfortunately, once again, that's a state thing as far as the remote online and the third party. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know. Frankie, if you got any insight, under governmental affairs on that one. But once again, Andrew, I'm going to defer back to Frankie on that one. Okay.
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 Go ahead.
Go ahead, Frankie.
I apologize. I heard the RON, but I'm not familiar with that.
Remote online notary.
Oh, yeah. We had an update yesterday from our National Association of Realtors Senior Vice President for Public Policy. Right now, there's 27 states that are in a temporary allowancing for this stuff, that are allowing temporarily for this to go on. That question was asked yesterday. Our National Association is really going to make this one of our top priorities to get this completed and make it something that occurs going forward. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those things that's going to force that issue to come to the top. And once people get comfortable with doing it, they're going to be more likely to go ahead and just accept it as a course of business. We're all kind of in different businesses, and as you know, sometimes the law is slowly behind technology, and we're not always able to write law that keeps up with technology. So this may be one of those areas that we do that. I do know that Florida legislature, I'm not 100% sure yet if the governor's actually signed this particular bill into law, but they did allow for online notaries and also for some of the other automatic signatures in Florida. So I think in Florida we're going to be fine, but on a national perspective, if you're doing business in other states, that may still be a little bit behind us as far as making it just standard practice.
And Andrew, just to follow up on Frankie, and that's where the third party's coming in at, that third party getting involved. Yep.
Okay, and if you have some of the documentation or anything, if anybody's interested in that, please send me your email address in there so Frankie can get that to you.
I will. I'll be happy to send that to you, Andrew.
We'd love to, because I got people that are saying they'd like to get copies of those, and I'll make sure that we can get that information out. Let's see. There was a whole bunch that jumped in here, and I know you're on a tight one there, Reese, so let me know. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Copy of the commercial documentation, resource available. Yep. Remote online. Yep. Got that. Third party sign up.
Andrew, if I can chime in on a second.
Please go ahead.
My name is Julio Viles, and I'm with Gold Star Title and Escrow. Just so you know, on the question from Justin, That's going to be discriminatory in regards to different mortgage companies, because they're never going to go into that remote online notary. They all want that wet signature for the most part. We've seen quite a bit of that. We try to get approved. We are approved. Maria's certified and all that at the office. It was just hard finding that third party where everybody slammed with specifications, and then, we're just not going to sign anyone because it's our reputation on the line, being in business since 2006. So Justin, it's just mortgage companies. It's per company based on how they want it.
Yep.
Good point.
Thank you, Julio.
Hey, Julio, I got a question. This is Terry. With your title company, the question about deeds, are they still requiring wet signatures on deeds? As far as I know, they are.
From what I understand, they are. Obviously, we're letting people into our office. We've let them in on a one-on-one basis. It's not a revolving door anymore like it used to be. But yeah, they're mostly required for the most part, from what I can recall, Terry. But I can actually find out for you or not. I can find out for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have any other commercial questions here? All right, there was yep. Okay, Justin Meyer also wants, okay. Yep, I'm trying to get everybody's email down so I can get that sent over so we can get those. Back to you. Any other questions? Let's see. With the remote signatures, how sensitive information is being protected from cyber issues? Anybody can answer that one?
That sounds like a Julio question.
Well, I mean, even with like when people are wiring funds, you cannot rely on the wiring information, because there's certain protocol that you have to take place when you want to make your deposit. So you have to call our office and get a certain code in order for us to get the wiring money done to us, because there's a lot of fraud with wire fraud going on, especially with this pandemic. It was already going on before this. It's easy. And then people look at, like, they spell my name instead of Julio, they put an A at the end, and they think, oh yeah, that's Julio. Guess what? That's the wrong email address. You just send me thousands of dollars, and guess what? I'm on vacation somewhere in Bora Bora or something like that, So yeah, it is sensitive information, and if it's not communicated by a phone call with us for confirmation, yeah.
Andrew, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and bow out. I've got to make a phone call for another interview, but I appreciate y'all asking me on today. I really appreciate it. Is there anything that you can think that the Orlando Regional Realtor Association can help you out with, or whatever? Feel free to give us a call or contact us by email, info@orlandorealtors.org. I sure do appreciate everything. And y'all have a safe and a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Reese. And if we have any others, Frankie is here. She can answer a few more questions for you. But thank you, Reese. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Frankie, anything else you want to just state on behalf of ORRA, and anything else you have going on?
Thank you. I am going to probably, as soon as I've got 2 documents, I'm going to go ahead and email over to you as soon as we log off, that you can forward. These are going to be from our National Association of Realtors website, as well as Florida Realtors website, having to do with commercial real estate and the coronavirus, as well as the online remote notary. And just following up a little bit on Julio's comments, what I have seen, particularly in the last 2 to 3 months, is anything of a financial nature is probably going to be the last vestige of where wet copy signatures are going to be required. About 1.5 to 2 years, Julio, it was, they quit doing wires versus the telephone. So now, because I do escrow, the foundation also falls under my department, and we do build affordable housing, and we go through a closing process. I physically have to go down to our bank and sign and authorize any money that's coming out of our escrow accounts for title purposes, right? It is not a very fun thing to have to do. We've kind of gotten very lazy and like the idea of being able to push a button, but I'll go to the bank before I want to lose that amount of money to somebody because of wire fraud, right? So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, and eventually we'll find a way to protect that more. But I've seen it more and more the lines when you start talking about moving money. It is particularly becoming more and more difficult as we continue in Central Florida, but also Florida as a whole, to continue to market and sell to international buyers. Some countries that we do a lot of business with obviously are much more sophisticated and run a little smoother. And then I hear from some of our international realtors that there are some countries that are just an absolute nightmare. A lot of times it has to do with how many times that money has to change currency. Could be a problem. So it's just, again, it kind of comes back to when you start touching money, it becomes a little bit more restrictive, for sure.
I agree. I agree 1,000%. I know that the girls probably don't go to the office as much, but everything is confirmed before any money is sent over. You know, we're sending it out. Obviously, we don't make money on wire transfer fees as well, so you know we pass that on to the customer. You know, $35, whatever it is that they charge. You know, and we're not in the business for making money there. We make our money on premiums, right?
Yeah, and so Andrew, the other point that folks might want to consider also is what we're seeing from a national perspective on this coronavirus is there's a lot of effort going into re-educating buyers and sellers on what now is going to be the new norm. And Reese kind of touched on that a little bit. There are some states around the country that are already starting to deal with liability issues as far as the coronavirus is concerned, as well as, Julio, what's that term? Is it a stigmatism? No, a piece of property can be stigmatized, right? So
yeah.
You see that sometimes if somebody passed away in a home, right?
Right.
That may or may not, depending on what state you live in, that may or may not be a required disclosure. And so people are already starting to talk about whether or not do we have to disclose if an individual who lived in the house or visited the house had coronavirus. So there's going to be a lot of those, I call them nuisance issues that we're going to be dealing with probably for a good couple of years once we get on the other side of this.
What has Justin seen in regards to those kind of addendums? I know that we had a COVID, addendum put on the sales contracts, but I know he's pretty much a real estate attorney. So have you seen anything different?
No, I'm actually not even seeing a lot of the COVID addendums.
That's makes no sense.
Well, I think the way it is to think what we always do is we always tell members, check with your broker. Ultimately, That's the individual that's going to be responsible. So whether you're a franchise or you're personally owned type real estate business, whatever your broker tells you to do, that's what you need to do.
That's true.
And in the course of this same line of conversation, Andrew, I was going to ask the folks that are on the call, we haven't heard anything in a good 8 to 9 months on the OUC lawsuit going on over in East Orange County. So that was another one where we got a couple of calls from several members over there. What do we do? Do we have to disclose? And my response was, what are you disclosing? Because it's a lawsuit, it's going to be considered in the court. And so we went ahead and checked with our own legal counsel, and their recommendation to us, and when we communicate with our members, is talk to your brokers, let your brokers do the investigations. Ultimately, if there's any issue or any legal proceedings, it's going to be the broker that's going to have to defend it. There's concerns regarding whether or not you're the buyer's agent or you're the seller's agent. There might be a different consideration given. So I was just a little curious if any of you all in East Orange are hearing any more about that. I know it's still ongoing, but I just didn't know if there'd been any kind of resolution to any of that yet.
My office is over. Sorry, I was going to say my office is over there, and so we are on like the local Facebook groups, and we hear from people there. And every once in a blue moon, it picks up a tiny bit, and then it disappears. I haven't heard anything about it. I want to say in 4 or 5 months at least.
Right.
Like it's gone quiet. And I think part of that may be COVID related because the courts have kind of have not entirely closed down in Florida, but
Right, they're not hearing a lot of
They're not hearing a lot, and with something like this, there's a lot of discoveries, there's a lot of depositions, and so it was going to be slow tracked anyway. And then as things started to slow down and people were just not going out of their houses, I think it probably got slowed down even a little bit more. It's not a case it's gonna. My gut is it's gonna resolve anytime in the near future. Probably not for a couple of years, and that's even if it gets to a judge, and it'll be a while before the judge issues a ruling.
I'd like to add to that addendum for COVID. Sometimes I talk to a bunch of realtors all the time, and sometimes they work for these virtual offices. They're super busy, but being a realtor for 13 years of my past life and mortgaging for as a loan originator for 5 or 6, it's called CYA. I'd actually cover myself just to cover myself in regards to an addendum. I mean, it doesn't hurt to add an addendum to a sales contract to protect yourself. Because Andrew knows, we've had this conversation, me being on the board of directors, about liabilities and lawsuits coming out and about. So even if it's written in black and white or electronic signature or whatever, I don't think there's nothing wrong with it adding to a sales contract for those that want to enter into real estate, are in real estate, or whatever. That's at least my 2-cent opinion. And we love to see them in our office.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, and every listing that I put on the MLS as an attachment, I put that OUC lawsuit on there for the buyers to sign. Just cover myself more than anything else. I don't think that there's anything going on with it. I don't hear anything. I probably haven't heard anything for the last 6 months.
Are you doing the same when you take listing agreements?
When I take a listing agreement,
I'm looking up
in the MLS where I put my attachments in for all different types of things you want to attach, homeowner associations, disclosures. I add that one in as an attachment for the buyer's agent to give to the buyer for them to have them sign it.
Okay.
Just to put them on notice.
Can I maybe address a little bit of the question that Dorothy had, if we still have a minute or two?
Yeah, I was going to make sure that we asked that one. I was waiting on the conversation. So go ahead. Dorothy had posted.
Are we good with the conversation? Are we done?
Yeah, I the last that I've heard, I think that plant will be closing at some point is what I've heard on things. But, that hasn't stopped the lawsuits and things that are there from what's that. But Dorothy had also asked, are there any immediate needs that realtors in Central Florida are needing at this time? And Frankie, also, if you can answer that from what you're hearing, are they needing resources, education, other, and what else can the chamber assist with when it comes to what our realtors have and the needs? So we're trying to put that all in a package to really make sure that we're working with our members on different pieces. So what are you hearing that are immediate needs that they have?
Dorothy, thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate that offer. I think, at least for coronavirus, we are kind of over the hump in the sense that some of the biggest frustration we were getting was from our members trying to navigate the unemployment system or the unemployment system in Florida. They finally reached a point where they were able to verify and tell members that they were going to be denied for Florida benefits, but they would be approved for the federal benefits. But the system the state of Florida has didn't have the ability to include federal payments in that system. So everybody has to go through being rejected before being accepted. It's kind of like dating in high school, right? So they've got to kind of run through all of that. So that money seems to be getting out and members seem to be getting their checks. So I think that's been real helpful. I think moving forward is just maybe a general understanding among everyone, and not just in the real estate business. I think it's probably true in any business that we're going to do. We got uncharted waters ahead of us. We're not really sure what's coming or what things are going to look like. I don't know if I shared this earlier, but I actually live just east of Avalon Boulevard in the rural settlement back there. So East Orange is my home as well. And we started coming back to the office about 2 weeks ago. We're located up on Lee Road between I-4 and OBT. And I have to tell you, all y'all staying home and working from home, I love that, because I literally can make it from Avalon and Highway 50 to Lee Road and I-4 in less than 30 minutes on most days. So the less traffic with folks going into the office and school being out has been a real dream for me, since I don't think I've gotten to work sooner since I moved out there in 2002. So so I'm really hoping we kind of see that throughout all of Orange County, that folks can kind of readapt it. And maybe part of our new business model is people being able to work from home for 2 or 3 days of each week, or doing an alternate, like you were talking about, Andrew, where you're on an alternating schedule. We're still doing that here at our office, where half our staff is here on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the other half is here Tuesday and Thursday, and we alternate weeks. So that's been great. Having the ability to do this, I think this has totally changed the way we will do committee meetings in the future. I think we will do less events and more Zooms. Had a great conversation with someone who said, you know, well, the way we used to lobby is you go from room to room. Now you're going to go from Zoom to Zoom. So we'll see a lot of changes in how we do business going that way. So I think more than anything, we all just need to be patient with each other and be kind, and just realize that we're all going through this together. But thank you so much for asking. That's a great question.
Yeah, there was one.
Frankly, the traffic is not going to last long, because sometimes it seems like what phase 2? This looks like phase 5.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been great for sure.
Yeah.
So Dorothy had just put a chime in there. Realtors were applying for unemployment. Were brokers laying off the realtors? And then sadly, she just said, sadly, I assume realtors were individual contractors. I apologize for ignorance. So
No, that makes a lot of sense. And actually, we were just talking about this before the meeting went on in terms of Andrew and health insurance. There is a very definitive line, and realtors just seem to be the most numerous of this labor issue. Our members, for the most part, are independent contractors. Brokers cannot require them to do any kind of meeting appointments. They can't, there's a lot of things they can't require them to do. They can require them to abide by the code of ethics and follow the law, et cetera, like kind of any kind of contractual relationship would. But no, they are considered independent contractors. And Dorothy, this is a great question. The reason why during the first CARES Act, the federal government decided to include, they didn't include realtors, they included contract 1099 employees. So for example, you have a lot of individuals, like in my business, although I am in governmental affairs, my background really is in politics. I do campaign management, right? So a lot of times I would work as a 1099 contractor, which means I was not technically an employee. I was on contract to perform a specific service to a specific candidate. So I would be the type of individuals. Well, if you look at organizations like ours and organizations like yours, you all may use independent contractors all the time. If you have an independent, if you guys hire out for an event planner, let's say, that event planner is likely a 1099 contract worker. So it wasn't targeted just to realtors. It was really targeted to those individuals that are 1099 tax filers. So because it included real estate, we probably have the largest group of folks. And the issues really come in because independent contractors under Florida law have never been eligible for unemployment insurance. So that's why this whole idea, the system is broken to start with, but then you add what? I mean, we added almost 3 million individuals to the Florida unemployment rolls in a period of about 2 to 3 weeks. I also think sometimes we forget what our workforce looks like. Like what is the demographic of our workforce? Well, for the most part, the majority of it is servers, bartenders, anybody involved in retail, restaurant, entertainment, or tourism. So that makes up what, Andrew? That puts us at about 65 to 70% of our workforce. Those individuals, 99% of them are out of a job in about 2 weeks. I think you saw the biggest impact really hit when Disney had to furlough what would traditionally be considered salaried employees. Everybody assumed the hourlies would obviously aren't going to work if the parks aren't there, but when you started to have to furlough your your salary employees, you then begin to see the impact of what this was. So Dorothy, to answer your question, the 1099 is just a very broad general classification of workers. And so many of those individuals are dependent on industries that did get shut down. So it might even be your accountant, it might even be your attorney, right? They are usually probably going to be our landscape companies are issued a 1099 at the end of every year, just based on how much money we've paid them for the services they provided. So the difference then becomes where you have big brokerage firms like a big Caldwell Banker franchise or an Exit franchise, et cetera. They actually will have employees. They might be their finance individual. They might be an administrative assistant. They can easily be individuals that are responsible for processing the closing documents, putting things in the MLS, that type of stuff. And they are truly employees in the true sense of the word. The way the CARES Act was written was employers had two options. If you agree, depending on how the IRS classified you, C6s, Andrew and us are not eligible. I don't know that it was we were intentionally kicked to the curb. It just is probably one of those things that nobody thought to include them. But for membership organizations, if y'all are like us, we collect our dues at the beginning of the year. So for all intent and purposes, our operating account is collected at the beginning of the year and we're good through the end. But for individuals like real estate companies, they had a choice. The individual could be let go and they would be eligible for unemployment, or the broker or whoever could keep them, pay them a salary, and then get reimbursed either under the Small Business Administration Loan Program, or they could write that off as a loss under their taxes at the end of the year. So we had several people ask, should I do this or should I do that? And the answer I would always give them, everybody's tax position and tax situation is different. I'm not a tax, certainly not an accountant. I'm not a bookkeeper. I'm not an attorney. So I have no professional experience to give you other than to say, talk to your accountant. Your tax situation or your tax status is going to be different than any other individual just based on whatever else you have going on, right? Do you have a spouse that gets a salary? Do you have children? Do you have dependents? Do you have a business? So everybody's tax situation is going to be different. Talk to your accountant who you would rely on that. So to answer again, Dorothy, the CARES Act provided several options, but the 1099 issue was more than just real estate.
Yeah. And then we did have another one come in. The news made it appear, though, that realty was still strong despite of the craziness around us. I assume that we're doing well. The realtors finding an upswing at this time, or is it still an issue for them due to the uncertainty?
I think Reese kind of talked about that a little bit. It's definitely on the upswing. And one of the things that we haven't really talked about this is, unfortunately, with the period of time that this hit, which was March through May, generally in most markets is the busiest time of the year for realtors, because folks are making a decision, either they're going to move for school or people are waiting till their children finish school before they leave or put their house on the market. It just really tends to be in Central Florida. We've seen that flatten a little bit. I think a lot of it is because we are such a mobile area anyway, that people are coming in and out all the time. But in other parts around the country, there's a definite bigger spike. You see that as a much bigger issue. Individuals that had homes already in listings that were already active, we saw those homes continue to close. Where we saw issues were with, if you had a buyer that had a contingency, for example, if their home didn't close, or if they didn't get financed, it became very difficult for somebody who, let's just use Disney, it'd be very difficult for an Andrew who gets furloughed from Disney, who's in the home buying process, who has no idea when he's going to get called back. He has no idea what his, he knows what his annual salary is, but is he going to be able to collect that by the end of the year? So where you had situations where there was contingencies on contracts, you saw a little bit of issues. But for the most part, if they were already in the closing process, they went ahead and closed. To Reese's point, I think where you saw a little bit of the slowdown was people weren't as willing to go ahead and rush out and suddenly become a home buyer, or suddenly rush out and now suddenly become a home seller. They kind of really wanted to see what was going to go on and what's going to happen. So I think Julio even said it, we're definitely starting to see an uptick now as we move into the summer and move into a full phase 2. People have asked me, my personal opinion is we will see what will happen locally as well as statewide once those parks get open up again, and they start inching up from the 50% capacity to the 75% capacity. Right now, as far as I know, we're still restricted on incoming movement from certain countries around the world. We will still see folks around Florida and folks around the United States get in their car and drive to Florida now. We see more people, I think, avoiding airplanes, are more willing to get on the road and drive. So we'll start seeing what coronavirus does once those people start entering the park and they start entering our area, whether or not that has a big impact on if we see a spike again. But I think you're going to see real estate continue to be strong in Central Florida. And I think you guys live this every day. Go find a home that you can afford to either buy or move into or rent right now. I mean, my husband and I laugh all the time. We bought our home 10 years ago. We would not be able to afford our home today for what we could sell it for. And I think there's a lot of people in a very similar situation. So the market's going to stay strong because it's going to be based on demand, not based on fault. I don't want to say faulty, but not based on unsustainable financing scenarios. Would you agree, Julio? You're not looking at people who are dependent on 5 adults working to make their mortgage payment every month, like we saw in the earlier.
So a couple of things. Just I'm curious, and I living in College Park, we have still a lot. We have a lot of the builder kind of realtor, builder, seller kind of thing, buying the bungalow homes, bulldozing them, and then building those 4 or 5 bedroom mansions. Is that going on in East Orlando? But then, is that a trend that, it looks like you see the builder sign go up, but then when it's for sale, it still has the builder sign up and it's pending. So I think it's like there are different groups that are out there that are buying these properties.
Right.
Is that what that is? That's a trend that's still on the uptick because construction still hasn't slowed down. No. And there's new construction popping up around us. Every week I'll go, whoa, I didn't see that coming.
Right. And I think when they first released the governor's order as well as Mayor Deming's order, they were very clear. They had no intention whatsoever for construction or real estate to slow down. I think Mayor Deming's made a point that if we do nothing else, we got to continue to try and build housing for individuals. We're just so far behind the 8 ball. I think the governor echoed that in making real estate and real estate transactions and affiliated financial services part of that. And Andrew, I think what you're going to see, Winter Park has been dealing with this issue for 25 plus years, where you have individuals that have come in and they have they've moved into neighborhoods where we would traditionally see it now as a mid-century modern type of home, and to me it's the homes that were built in the 50s and 60s all over Florida. Those are fairly decent sized lots compared to what subdivisions look like now. So you've seen that in the Winter Park area and even in College Park over the years, but not to the extent that you've started to see that. And I think you're going to see it more and more in neighborhoods in infill areas where they are closer to the downtown. I think if you look out east where we are, east of Alafaya, particularly, most of those homes that are out there were built when Waterford first started getting built, which was, I want to say, in the mid to late 80s, if I am correct on that. So those homes are still within the 30 to 40 year old time period. You're seeing some of them come up where further where I am, like in the rural designation, the older homes or septic tanks are now coming up where they either have to be replaced or they have to be hooked up to sewer, etc. I think you're going to continue to see individuals buy lots for the value of the dirt and possibly either significantly change the existing structure or just remove it all together and start over. But I think you're going to see that more in your infill areas,
Gotcha.
More so than the out suburban areas. Because they're building them, I mean, out where we are, if you look at the homes in some of the homes in Avalon and even in the final phases of Waterford, and then also look at was originally being built in Lee Vista in the late 2000s, the early 2010s and the teens, they're what we would call, or builders would call, the generational homes, where you suddenly started to have 5, 6, and 7 bedrooms, but 2 master suites, right? So your market became much more multi-generational, where that was really what the demand was. So you've got the bigger homes that are being out there in the new areas. They were built as original structures in those areas.
Gotcha. Well, we've hit. Go ahead, Justin. Go ahead. I don't mind. for a bit.
I looked up the case, and I figured I would give everybody a quick update. There's a trial date set in the case. It is for, if you want to mark your calendars now, December 6th, 2021.
Oh, wow. Okay. And that's federal court, right, Justin?
Yeah, it's in federal court. It's going back and forth. A summary judgment motion was just denied. OUC is trying to get sovereign immunity, which means they wouldn't be liable, but it doesn't mean that there's no actual problem. So it's kicking around, but it's going to be kicking around for a while. You know, just looking at all this, it's going to be kicking around for a while, because if they're setting it for trial next December, it's not going to trial until
2023.
Well, probably at least 2022, because I mean, I don't know where I'm going to be next December. I find it interesting they've already we'll put it on the calendar for then. But so it's going to be kicking around for a while. The discovery itself alone is going to be out there for a while. I'll add this to my watch list of cases I watch, and I'll keep people updated if there's interest. But it's going to be something that's just kind of hanging over people's heads for quite a while.
So a little way back, you had mentioned about getting financed. We're in a seller's market, but are buyers having issues getting financing due to the current environment, or is it a case by case? And
it's going to be a case-by-case basis. I think where you're going to see what I meant by people having a difficult time getting financed is if they were furloughed, or there was, or their business closed, or they owned a business, a restaurant, or a bar that was not considered essential and basically was shut down. I was in Winter Park Village the other day and noticed that Brio restaurant, it's not just that it was closed, it's gone. And I don't know if that's just that location or that company as a whole, but that was a phenomenal restaurant as far as I'm concerned. So, if you were in an employment situation where your future earnings was in question, that's where you just started to see some people back up or say, wait a minute, or even the banks were like going, maybe we should just hold off on a minute. The other situation you were finding, and I think Julio talked to this a little bit, is, the courts closed down also. So there was no court documents that were being processed, but the comptroller's office, Phil Diamond's office, was still recording deeds and recording official documents, but they were only doing that electronically. So some of the slowdown was really beyond even the real estate market's control, just depending on what the deal looked like. If it was and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, if it was a situation where a transaction took place because of a probate issue, or you had somebody who might have passed away and they were changing title, a lot of that stuff just didn't get done because the courthouse wasn't open. So you don't know, based on the listings, how many of those are because of those situations.
Some of it got done, some of it didn't. If you didn't need a hearing, it was a lot quicker. If you needed a hearing, or if you didn't need a hearing, I was still getting orders signed a week to 10 days.
Gotcha.
Needed a hearing, all bets were, it could take, all bets were off then.
But you were still getting documents recorded, right? I'm
still getting documents. So the way it seems to be working, and I mean, I'm not going down to the courthouse. They don't want to see me there either. But it seems, from what I've heard, there's like one or two clerks in the courthouse, and the rest are working from home, and the judges, a lot of them are working from home, and their JAs or
gotcha.
Case managers are working from home. So it slows the process down. But because they're also not hearing cases, they can process these they're processing more of the petitions that don't need hearings.
That makes sense.
The hearings as they need to. So there's a bit of a delay. Sometimes there's a bit more of a delay when you file and then to get everything through the system, but it is working. It's just taking a little bit of time. And that's slowly changing now as the clerk's offices are opening back up.
Right.
And everybody's starting to go back to, the courts are starting to open back up as well.
Frankie, I wanted to add to what you were saying about financing, because we've seen it in a lot of places. Probably easier to get a mortgage through a mortgage company than if you went to some of these big boys, the Wells Fargos and the Chases of the world, because then they went to a 700 plus credit score. So in Central Florida, not funding anybody, but I don't think that's the average credit score.
Right.
And then mortgage companies themselves went away from 580, and then they went to 600 or 620 or whatever. I'm not in the loan business, but I know that I've seen it, and it delayed a lot of our closings because they changed these things as they went along. So, you know, you needed a higher, Dorothy, you needed a higher credit score. You needed, you know, maybe 6 months reserve. Somebody told me today, I went to go visit a real estate office. They were trying to do an investment. They tried to do a bank statement. No, they wanted like 20% down, and they want like 6 months reserves because, you know, that's not your normal real estate transaction because it was an investment loan, you know. So those things, those criterias from the financing aspect of it change how buyers are able to purchase a home.
So a lot of it would probably depend on where you are in the transaction. Something was closed down. And just in closing, because I know you guys are generally off of here by now, one of the other areas that affected real estate was the forbearance on mortgage collection if you were a government-backed, and also evictions. And one of the things we wanted to make sure our members understood in the general public is this does not mean you get a free pass and you're not required to pay. You're still required to pay your rent, and you're still required to pay your mortgage. It just was, you couldn't be convicted, and you couldn't be evicted, and you couldn't be foreclosed on. We did run a little bit of a situation, some parts around Florida, is also the country, where mortgage companies, once, if you did get into and your mortgage was forgiven for a certain number of months, once you were able to pay, it was almost like a foreclosure. Correct me if I'm wrong, Julio, but some mortgage companies were demanding full payment once you were able to pay, as opposed to putting the mortgage payment. Some companies were willing to put them at the end of your mortgage. So if you paid off in 30 years, and that happened to be April, you now paid off in 30 years and you were done in June or July. They stuck those additional months at the end. But it just depended on the institution and who held your mortgage. And I think they kind of cleaned that up in the second part of the legislation. I haven't heard anything about that in the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Well, the problem what happens is that people go with what they see on Facebook and their neighbor and this and that. Oh, no, I was forgiven. Then they find out that they were not forgiven. You know, I, as a title company educator, you know, trying to communicate with those in my industry, you know, we'll tell them, please check with your mortgage company, your bank, or whatever it is. What is your whatever it is, what is your backing on this forbearance thing? You know, I've told them I'm going to be forgiven. You know, hey, people's credit are going to get messed up now. So I'm working with a lot of credit repair companies that are like, they're slammed right now. I can't even do like Zoom videos to get them on because they're too busy.
Yeah, and so I sent Andrew those documents. He should have them. So I want to thank you all so much. It's been a real joy, real treat to talk with y'all.
Well, we appreciate Frankie, and thank Reese again for us being on. This was great. Just a final note, just for those of you that haven't heard or didn't see the emails on it, but we now have a direct pay, which is basically for doctors, so that if you are interested or looking for an additional benefit as a member of the chamber, this is a way that you can actually go see a doctor. It's $77 a month to be able to do that, plus a $10 copay whenever you want to go see the doctor. Plus there's up to 200 different prescriptions that are available between $1 and I think $5 to $10 on that within those. So that's a brand new benefit that we put in. If you are interested in any of that, you can couple that with the other benefits that we had for healthcare. It's a great opportunity for you. So it's a direct primary care program that we have to add on to the other health benefits that we have there. So if you don't have anything, it's another great way of getting some type of medical pieces for you. So we thank you all to be here with another shameless plug. Thank you once again, Frankie. We hope to see you around.
Welcome. Thank you for having us.
With that, we appreciate ORRA, and thank you for let Reese know. But without further ado, thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Make it a safe one.
Thank you, Justin. It was great meeting you. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
All right.